Hello, welcome to another Seeds of Flourishing video. So I thought in this video I'd talk about a trip I recently took. We went down to Kejimkujik, which is a national park in Nova Scotia and a national historic site. So this had been the weekend of the 17th and 18th of September 2022, if you're watching this video quite far into the future. So I thought I'd just very quickly go through why you should visit the national park down there. You can see that this is not me, this is from the Parks Canada website. I'm going to include a link to all the particular websites that I include in this video. And the reason why I brought this particular item up, it's one of these things where you go on the website and it plays through 6 images, is because on the trails that we went on, and I'll show you the trails on the map in a moment, they had this really nice wooden path that was there, and so that made parts of it which would have been challenging to walk through a lot easier if you have some sort of difficulty with mobility. Now, admittedly, these are trails. So you've got to have some degree of mobility to go through these. But saying that, it was certainly made a lot easier in certain areas to have this sort of wood walkway that was very well maintained. And there's several sites that obviously mention this. It's a pretty major area. It's the only, as far as I know, it's the only national park in Nova Scotia. I could be wrong. I'm only going from what I've been told. And you can see there's several sources of information here that I've got up. So I've got the Parks Canada website. So this would cover the whole of Canada, not just Nova Scotia, but obviously there's an area on here for national parks. And one of these is for Keji. And we've got novascotia.com, so that deals with various sites of interest within Nova Scotia. And then we also have Halifax Trials.ca, which is a trails site. I'll also include the Wikipedia article on it. So it covers 404 square kilometres. It's in the southwest of Nova Scotia Peninsula, located within 3 municipalities: Annapolis, Queens, Digby. Now, in a previous video I had mentioned about Lunenburg, and it's pretty close to Lunenburg County. There's also petroglyph sites there as well, and you can camp there in certain areas, but it has to be booked beforehand as far as I know. We didn't camp there, we just went on to pre-arranged talks, like nature talks, which was about a 2-hour walk around a couple of trails, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, or show you where they were. It's also been designated a dark sky preserve, and part of the reason we went down there is prior to this we had booked a night out at a dark sky area which has a telescope and those special tents which are under positive pressure, and they have like a clear roof on them. But unfortunately the weather was going to be bad that weekend, so we actually cancelled. With those sort of things you can cancel a couple of days before. So this was a sort of a way in which we could check out the surrounding area as well in a pretty low risk way, because we have a relative that has a camp down near here, or relatively near here. It's not in the dark sky area, but it's in the middle of a area of forestry, and so you do get relatively dark skies. Again, I'll show you on the map. We'll start talking about dark skies in a moment. So here's a map of the actual park itself, and if I zoom out, what they've done here is they've superimposed it on Google Maps. Whoops, sorry about this. And you can see some of the walks here. Now, the two that we were on was the one up by, what was it called now? Was it Big Dam? So I'm just trying to find this. I did have it earlier. Oh, there we go. Big Dam parking. So if I zoom out, so we came in through here. And then turned off. Now this bit here, you can see this is quite great. This is actually fairly rough road. I mean, it's drivable, there's no problem, but it's that slightly chalky road. It's not tarmacked, and it has been obviously compressed down so you can drive over it, but it is incredibly dusty. So we drove in, parked up here, and then the nature trail stroke talk was around here. And we stopped off at various information points, and the guide walked us through some information about the area. So this here was a Hemlocks and Hardwoods trail. So it was more of a trail about hemlock trees and hardwood trees, and a little bit about the natural aspects of that, in terms of how they compete for resources and various other things. So that was really interesting. So we went to that on the Saturday. We stayed over a night at a relative's camp close to here, and I'll show you in Google Maps where everything is. And then on the following day, and here we go, Snake Lake. So you can see this sort of grey road here is a lot longer. In fact, I don't. It's a bit difficult on this map to see where it goes from being. I think here, yeah. So this, around about here, this is the tarmacked area, and then the rest of this is non-tarmac compressed road, basically, which is, as I've said, pretty dusty, particularly on a dry day. I imagine when it's a little bit wet, it's probably not too bad, but on a dry day, you definitely don't want to have the windows open. And then we parked up and walked around the area there, and again, it's pretty cool. This one was more of sort of wetlands talk, I suppose, that we went round. But obviously you can get to all sorts of areas round here as well, if you feel so minded. Because you can see, and I'll show you in the map how big Kejimkujik is. This just basically shows the different routes here. Some of these areas, as you can see, you can camp at. Some you're not supposed to. Like, for instance, this area, there's a bridge you cross. It goes over a stretch of water. I can't remember. Maybe it's here. No. Anyway, yeah, it goes over some water, and as a consequence, as you sort of cross the bridge, you're sort of going from a tarmac area to an untarmacked compressed road. And the interesting thing about it is that as you do, oh, there it is. Yeah, it's difficult to see from here. As you traverse, there's a sign, I think that says something like "No camping beyond this point." On there. So just to give you a better idea, because I'm sort of working from close up outwards on this particular video. So here's a map we've seen before when I've spoken about Nova Scotia in previous videos. So here's Halifax. I sort of live over in this area of Nova Scotia. This is where Kejimkujik National Park actually is. So round here. And we were staying in this area over here overnight. And I mentioned before Lunenburg in a previous video, and Chester Basin and Mahone Bay. So you can sort of see where it is in relation to that. So it takes about a couple of hours from Halifax to get to here. Quite a lot of it is on highway, but once you get here you are on smaller roads, and it can be a bit tricky the first time you go down there trying to find everything. Although once you get on the way in, you get to a point where it's pretty well signposted actually. I think probably from Bridgewater. It's just coming out, sometimes it can get a little bit confusing. Now the reason why I'm zooming out again here is I just wanted to show you something. So had we have gone to the earlier Dark Skies place, which was earlier in the month, to look through the telescope and stay in those special tents I mentioned, that's more down here, over I think in this area roughly. Previously we'd stayed up here one time near a place called Liscombe Mills, and we were really impressed by how dark the sky was up there as well. And if you look at one of these light pollution maps, you can see why. This is like the second half of the video. So Keji's down here, you can see. So if you look at this, the darkest skies, obviously you can see out to sea here. So there's this sort of second level of darkness. And that's as dark as you're going to get in Nova Scotia in certain areas. As you can see, the hot areas here, I mean, there's a lot of light pollution, and that's not surprisingly Halifax. We're somewhere over here, so not great. But Liscombe Mills is out in this sort of area, roughly. You can see here we've got another area which is as dark as the area that Keji's in. So I just wanted to show you if you've not seen one of these dark sky maps before, because it's really useful if you like to do stargazing. Now, as I discovered, you can, once you have this map, it's possible to sort of say, well, you know, the next level of darkness down is acceptable. And we did work out that on the coast there's areas like here which would be, you know, sufficiently dark, which you could get to. That's probably about an hour's journey from where we live, so a little bit easier than trying to get down to, say, one of these areas. So this is about a 2-hour drive down to here as well. So 2 hours to get to here, a couple of hours to 2 hours to get to here. And you can see within Nova Scotia there's not many other places that are going to be that dark unless you drive even further. Now, of course, if you're fortunate enough and you want to get out to here, in this area here, so much further north in Canada, yeah, it's very dark there at night. So, and you can see, it's interesting, isn't it, when you see the whole of this. Look at the differences over here between this side and this side here in terms of where all the population is. I'm not quite sure on here where the border is between Canada and the US, but it's probably somewhere along here, maybe a bit further down actually, because New Brunswick is here, and then this would be, I suppose, Maine over there. Yeah, so that's a little bit about just my recent trip to Keji and about dark skies. I always like to throw some musical connection in here as well often. So while I was down there, I couldn't help but walking. You know, you're walking through this forest. It's great. You know, it's a fantastic area to visit. It's got a real dead sound to it because there's just the forest is so thick. So it has a real silent quality to it. And it's you know, the good thing is now going forward, we know what the camping facilities are like down there, because we had a look around, and there's, you know, each a little mini campsite, and it normally has like 2 plots on it, and there's like a wood shed and an outhouse down there as well. And the you know, the camping plots, the ground is prepared, so it's all sort of flat. So the only thing, you probably need quite a nice mat to sleep on, because it would be quite hard, because the area where the tents are supposed to put has been compressed down. But it was nice to sort of visit there and get an idea if we did want to go camping down there, and to take advantage of the darkness of the night sky down there, and didn't necessarily want to go to the sort of specific camping area where the observatory is that I'd already mentioned, and those special tents, which obviously is quite a bit more expensive than going down to Keji and just paying, you know, for a night to stay and bringing your own tent. Then we now know that that's an option. And they actually have dark sky events down there where you can just sort of, you can pre-book, but you can go down there for a couple of hours. You have to use, what they call red lights, so you don't mess everybody's night sight and night vision up. But yeah, that's an option as well, which we didn't realise they were actually running dark sky events actually out within the Kejimkujik National Park itself. And while I'm down there, really taking in the vibe of being in the forest, I couldn't help but initially I was thinking of Rush's track Trees from Hemispheres, and that was going through my head. I did actually have my iPod with me actually, but I didn't put it on and listen to it because I was just so I'm not overwhelmed, but just the nature of the silence there was just really interesting, and it felt so calming, and I didn't want to destroy that. And then that got me thinking about A Forest by The Cure. Now, I created a little playlist about, I don't know, this must have been about 11 years ago, with all the covers of A Forest I could find, including the original version on 17 seconds and the remix on Mixed Up. So it's got the Carpathian Forest cover off of Black Shining Leather. It's got Bat for Lashes cover, which is really cool. Kind of Hemlocks did a cover. Jess Mills. This is really cool. This band 08001. Yeah, quite an interesting cover version. So I'm going to include a link to that in the description. And then finally, while we're talking about covers of Cure songs, if you're not aware, there is actually a compilation called Perfect as Cats, where different bands do a number of different cover versions, not just a Forest. And so I'll include a link to that as well if you've got Spotify. That's quite an interesting listen. So thanks once again for watching. Hope you've enjoyed that little talk about a recent trip to Keji. And I will catch you in the next video.